Okay, well, they sometimes say third time lucky, so I'm hoping it will be the third time lucky this time. I'm sorry that my previous live streams have gone wrong. If you were the person who was apparently watching the live stream, according to my indications, somebody just subscribed to my channel. So if that's the case, then thank you very much. Hope you enjoy some of the content or all of the content even. Um, I'm 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 making this live stream now, and I have set the chat line to active if anybody would like to interact with me. But I'm saying that rather optimistically because so far I've had problems with the software and I don't know how long this is going to hold up. So I'm going to carry on speaking until it goes wrong. But I'd just like to speak a little bit about the Gibson controversy, the fact that Gibson are apparently suing a few guitar companies because of what they call infringement of intellectual property or some or copyright or something of that kind where it's to do with their designs being used. Now, as we all know, Gibson's designs have been used by probably thousands of companies all over the world, um, and most of them have all got away with it most of the time, and and so, in a way, people are pointing out that it's probably a bit irrelevant of Gibson to try and sue for some of these designs. But on the one hand, that might be there might be an argument for that. But on the other hand, particularly in the case of things like the Flying V, where Gibson probably did come up with that idea in the first place, that in a way that they're trying to protect their own ideas, and people are kind of railing against Gibson as if there's a kind of some sort of deep-seated bad feeling against Gibson by some of these people who are criticizing Gibson, and I've sort of decided to come on here and say something in defense of Gibson because I feel like people are overlooking certain things about Gibson that are sort of valuable realities, and also they're possibly overlooking the fact that Gibson are possibly been paying royalties to people like Les Paul for using that design, where other companies have just taken the design, copied it off Gibson, and are probably not paying any royalties to Les Paul whatsoever. Les Paul, in case you don't know, was an actual human being. He was a guitarist who kind of co-designed the Les Paul with Gibson, and it was named after him. And they were probably paying him like in a way that a lot of companies pay a sponsor, a sponsorship, somebody for a sponsorship deal, or like a skateboard company will pay extra to a professional skateboarder if they name one of their skateboard parts after that person. So, for instance, if there's a deck being sold that's got Rodney Mullen's name on it by Powell Peralta, for instance, then Powell Peralta are probably paying Rodney Mullen a little bit every time one of those decks are sold. Now, those things actually put the price up because they put the price up because they're having to pay that extra aspect, and sort of along these lines, a lot of people seem to be critical of Gibson, and because they're basically on the side of the Fender kind of a philosophy of guitar making, which is basically that Fender is sort of effective but cheap, and that is really the reason, one of the key reasons why Fenders are less expensive than Gibsons, is because the way that they're manufactured with a bolt-on neck for mainly, there's one of the biggest issues is the bolt-on neck. Gibsons, expensive Gibsons tend to have set necks which are glued in, and they are not removable. And in order to do that, actually, it's a more skillful procedure than putting a bolt-on neck on a guitar. And also, it actually has a positive effect on the tuning of the guitar, in my experience and in my opinion. And that is to say that in reality, Fender guitars or Fender style guitars actually tend to sound more out of tune than a Gibson guitar, partially because of the bolt-on neck, because bolt-on necks tend to be a bit wobbly. And this is something that is being overlooked by a lot of people who are all coming out on the side of Fender, because Fenders are quite significantly cheaper. You can probably get a top of the range Fender for about £800 in Britain, whereas a top of the range Gibson is a couple of £1,000. But there is a reason for that, and the reason is that basically Gibson is a higher quality guitar. That's one of the reasons why Gibson is so much more expensive than Fender, is because Gibson is generally a higher quality guitar. So if you compare the top of the range Gibson with the top of the range Fender, the top of the range Gibson is a higher quality guitar than the top of the range Fender. I'm making this point because if you go to the bottom of the range of the Gibson, you might find something similar to a Fender, but then the bottom of the range Fender is going to probably be less high quality than the bottom of the range Gibson. So I'm waffling on, but some of the reasons that Gibson is more high quality and more expensive is also the humbucking pickups, which are more sophisticated. They're basically a higher quality form of pickup than the single coil. And although some people love the single coil, that is a matter of opinion whether you like that plinky, bright sound. During the 1970s, Fender was very popularized by the fact the late 60s as well, by the fact that Jimi Hendrix used to play a Stratocaster. But what a lot of people don't seem to realize about Jimi Hendrix is that Jimi Hendrix wouldn't have played a Les Paul in a similar way as a Stratocaster, because he played the Stratocaster upside down, because he played guitar left-handed. Now, another thing that a lot of people don't realize is that Jimi Hendrix was not actually left-handed, and he wrote with his right hand, but he learned to play guitar left-handed, and because he wanted to play it left-handed, he started out using an upside-down Stratocaster because of the cutaway at the top. Then when it was turned upside down, would cause a cutaway at the bottom, so that he could play the higher notes up at the top of the guitar neck. So that was one of the key reasons why Jimi Hendrix chose to play a Stratocaster. And in fact, Jimi Hendrix did play a Flying V, and possibly if he'd have got his hands on a left-handed version of another type of Gibson, he would have played that, or he could have admittedly played an SG, but I don't know how available that would have been to him at the time. But in fact, I'm not sure. I think he might have actually played an SG. I know Carlos Santana used to play an SG a lot, and he was another excellent guitarist. One of the reasons that I'm saying all this is because all this anti-Gibson buzz seems to be being made on the internet. And I'd like to point out also that one of the reasons that a company like Gibson is now having difficulty to remain afloat is probably because a lot of the money has gone out of the music industry due to the internet, MP3s, and MTV, and those sorts of phenomenons kind of combining to make a situation where people are not making as much money out of the music and the music industry, and consequently some of these more expensive brands are probably having difficulty shifting their product. That it doesn't have quite the appeal for so many people to be buying that, to be investing in that, and they might be looking for less expensive options. And it's true that you do probably pay for the Gibson name, and it probably does put an extra amount of money on top of a guitar. That is to say, maybe you could get a similar guitar for less money that didn't have the Gibson name. But at the same time as that, you could get a similar guitar as a Fender that for less money. For instance, a Yamaha Stratocaster style is probably as good as a Fender Stratocaster, but it costs less because it doesn't have the iconic name. And this is becoming like a bit of a bitch war between those people who believe in the Fender ideology, make it cheap and cheerful, and let's say, this is brilliant, and then put down Gibson because they're a bit more expensive, they're a bit more sophisticated, they're a bit more classy. And also, in my opinion, they are really the iconic rock guitar, and in terms of hard rock particularly, Stratocaster doesn't really compete in terms of its capability for hard rock. If you look at rock guitarists like Gary Moore from Thin Lizzy, people like that, they're all using a Les Paul for a reason, because of the sound, because of the depth of the sound and the tonality of it. The Stratocaster has a much lighter sound. It's got what some people call a tubular sound, and some people really like that, but it's not suitable for quite a lot of different types of music. And I have always personally felt that the Gibson was a higher quality instrument. I have never owned a top of the range Gibson guitar, but when I was younger, in fact I had a bottom of the range Gibson guitar called as Gibson Sonex, which was more like a cheap Epiphone than a Gibson. It had a bolt-on neck, and it was made of resin rather than wood, and obviously was not really representative of a real high quality Gibson. But at the same time, I have always personally felt that Gibson probably was a better instrument in many ways than a Fender guitar, and that's one of the key reasons. Because it's more carefully made. It takes more skill to make a top of the range Gibson than it does to make a Fender. For instance, in the top of the range Gibson, they have chambered. They have wood that is chambered. They choose a particular type of mahogany, which is said to be a good tone wood. But because it's very heavy, they cut parts of it out of the body and then cover over. Obviously they put a top or whatever over the top of so you can't see the holes, but that's in order to use a tone wood and make it lighter. None of that goes into the preparation of a Fender guitar. They just choose a sort of medium or lightweight wood and then make the whole body out of that in one chunk, and then cover it in whatever polyurethane or whatever they cover it with, and then they bolt the neck on, and it's all like a bit of the old 1-2. Now my live streaming thing appears that it might be going wrong again. If you can hear me, I feel a bit like I'm on some kind of a sinking raft here, but if you can hear me, thanks for listening, but I will probably be signing off now because this thing is not working as it should be by the looks of it. So thank you for listening, and I might come back in a little while. If I've ignored any chat that you might have tried to make, I'm very sorry, but I've been looking at the one screen and hoping that it wasn't going to go wrong. It might have gone wrong, I'm not sure. Thanks again for listening if you have done, and further than that, not much more to say now, so thanks again, and I'm off the air now. Cheers, and hoping that it wasn't going to go wrong. It might have gone wrong, I'm not sure. Thanks again for listening if you have done, and further than that, not much more to say now, so thanks again, and I'm off the air now. Cheers, hoping that it wasn't going to go wrong. It might have gone wrong, I'm not sure. Thanks again for listening if you have done, and further than that, not much more to say now, so thanks again, and I'm off the air now. Cheers, hoping that it wasn't going to go wrong. It might have gone wrong, I'm not sure. Thanks again for listening if you have done, and further than that, not much more to say now, so thanks again, and I'm off the air now. Cheers, hoping that it wasn't going to go, it might have gone wrong, I'm not sure. Thanks again for listening if you have done, and further than that, not much more to say now, so thanks again, and I'm off the air now. Cheers, hoping that it was go, it might have gone wrong, I'm not sure. Thanks again for